Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM from the unceded Musqueam Territory at the University of beautiful British Columbia. I'm Michael McCall.
And I'm Zachary Adam Eisenhower.
And no Steve with us again this week. Steve, he couldn't make the show because FC Dallas coming to town, so he thought the most logical thing to do was to travel to Texas for 2 weeks. He's adamant he's going to see family. I think he got the fixture list the wrong way round.
Well, is he going to try and take in the Texas Derby while he's on there?
Well, he's hoping to maybe go and see the Houston-Austin game next weekend, which would be fantastic if he could.
And surely he'll be able to find a ticket for a match at Houston.
I don't know if he's met Shirley before, but maybe Shirley could find him a ticket. Well, I don't know, because like Austin fans do travel in numbers, so you would imagine that they might fill up a few of those extra seats.
Yeah, but there's always seats available.
Yeah, and Houston are not having a great start to the season, it has to be said.
No.
They're so bad, they're below the Whitecaps in the standings right now.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But we are going to talk a couple of Whitecaps games in the show. We'll be looking at the first points on the board, or point on the board, in MLS action for the Whitecaps against Dallas on Saturday afternoon. We'll bring you our feature interview for the show, which is Whitecaps captain Ryan Gauld. Hashtag he's my captain.
I was going to say, what?
He is the captain. He's the one that plays the games. He wears the armband. We'll be talking about the testimony over on, is it Parliament Hill you guys call it? I don't know what spot in Ottawa, what spot in Victoria. But anyway, the national team players testifying.
In Ottawa.
It was in Ottawa, yeah. So we'll chat about that in part 4. I'm sure that could get a little bit heated, because that was an interesting committee meeting, something I'm not very familiar with because I don't follow Canadian politics all too often. But we're going to kick things off by looking at the dominant Whitecaps Champions League performance midweek. What time is it, Zach?
It's today was 5 past Augsburg.
Well, it's also time to move the clocks forward, depending on when you listen to this. Har said to me at the game today, she's like, remember to put your clocks back tonight. I was like, Har, do not put your clock back. That's the worst thing you could do tonight.
You don't have, if you have a phone or whatever, it does it for you, right? You don't have to worry about it.
Well, yeah, but I have manual clocks as you...
Wait, manual is a clock at your house?
Yeah. I have manual clocks, that famous German journalist who's going to jump on to talk Bundesliga in part 5 of this episode. But no, we have a clock in the kitchen that is very loud, and I hear it a lot when we're recording this. This mic picks everything up. I haven't heard it when I'm editing it back, but when I'm recording, I just hear... which is either the clock in the kitchen or it's a clicker from The Last of Us coming to devour me. Just get that reference in nice and early. But no, what time is it? It was 5 past Lopez on Wednesday evening. A 5-star performance for the Whitecaps against Real Espana. 5 alive. How many more of these have I got? Quite a lot. It was a horrible return trip to Vancouver or a horrible trip all round really for Real Espana to Vancouver. From getting here to the 5-0 shellacking to a player collapsing after the game, and then the journey back to San Pedro Sula, which at the time of recording this, a lot of the teams still are not back in Honduras. I will go into all those details over this part. I think it's safe to say that they will never want to hear the name Whitecaps or Vancouver ever again after the second leg this Wednesday, unless they stage the most dramatic turnarounds of turnarounds in that second leg, which, I don't know, maybe they will. But a phrase I like to use here a lot, which is a big UK phrase and it's tied in with betting, is if 5 goals are scored, you would say the Whitecaps went nap. Nap is just a kind of betting thing where you've got a 5-bet accumulator that goes on. So I always like to use that phrase, especially in my commentary, because I know most people here have no idea what I'm talking about, especially Gideon, when I mention it. Even though I mention it a lot, he still looks at me puzzled. But I think that is just a look on his face sometimes. I think the wind changed one day and it kind of stuck that way. But somewhat amazingly, the Whitecaps went nap after their sleepy start, where Yohei Takaoka had to make 2 big saves to keep out Benavidez. Otherwise, that could have been 1 or 2 away goals for Real Espana, and we could have been talking about a very different second leg to this tie coming up. It was a surprising start from me, Zach, from the Hondurans, because I think a lot of folk thought they were going to bunker, but they clearly thought, let's take it to the Whitecaps in the early going here, and if we can sneak an away goal with the form that they're in, they're going to be under a lot of pressure.
Well, maybe they knew that there wasn't going to be a lot of gas in the tank at the end of the game.
Yeah, that
so
too.
Like, we got to go for it, from the get-go to try and get something out of this.
But the Whitecaps survived. They took control of the game. Now, we're not going to delve into this in tons of detail. It was one of those games. But, I mean, there's a few talking points out of this that I do want to cover. So the opening goal, 21st minute, Tristan Blackman, short corner from Christian Dahomey to Julian Gressel. What a ball in from the German. His 3rd assist on the season. Pinpoint accuracy onto the head of Blackman. A great header from him as well. 1-0 Whitecaps and no looking back after that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, would not be a great goal to concede if you're Real Spain or Real Espana.
The Real Spain.
Sorry, Royal Spain. That would be right. The translation.
I guess it would be
Royal Spain.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I mean, from a Whitecaps perspective, it was be very, very happy. Gressel, like you said, the first 3 assists of the first 3 goals of the season. A great crosser of the ball from wide positions. And
he's been like we saw it with the US national team when he got the assist in his debut. Mm-hmm. His accuracy with these balls is tremendous. He's been one of the best additions, I think, in the Vanny era. Especially from within the league.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm joking about the wide areas, but he has shown also that he can still make space from that kind of right-sided 8 position or whatever to get in either early crosses or to get even, further wide to still create from that as he did on the weekend to, less effect. But no, a good opening for the Whitecaps, and yeah, they got the ball rolling. Whatever it was, like a quarter into the match.
I think the disappointing thing though for me is they didn't then push on and add to that tally in the first half. Vite probably had the best chance that just went wide, but you kind of thought they were dominating. They could have turned it on, and I was still a little bit concerned at half time because a 1-goal lead in Champions League, 1 away goal, and all of a sudden the tie's turned upside down. But we didn't have to worry too much because from the 59th minute onwards it was just Whitecaps. The Ryans were getting very heavily involved. Mm-hmm. Man of the match, Ryan Raposo, made it 2-0 in the 59th minute. Nice little cut inside after his run. Nice finish as well. Got the ball from Ryan Gauld, who got 2 assists on the night. Mm-hmm. And Raposo seems to rise to the occasion in cup competitions. I asked him that after the game, what it is about it. It's like, I just don't know. He just loves these competitions. He loves playing. He did well in the Canadian Championship for the Whitecaps last season. Scored a couple of goals for Vaughan Azzurri in the Canadian Championships against Halifax in the past as well. Now got a goal in the Champions League. And Vanny had said afterwards, the goal was basically what he had told Ryan not to do. Don't cut inside and have a shot. And it's like, I'll just ignore the boss, and that's the end result.
Yeah, I think the keeper would have been kind of frustrated to be beaten at the near post, but from a Ryan perspective, great decision not to listen to your coach.
Yes. 5 minutes later, I mean, this leg was then out of sight. It was 3-0. An unfortunate own goal from Devon Garcia. Dahomey played the ball in, and Garcia obviously knew that he had a player behind him, which was Vite. And I like to, like, if Vite had scored, I would have been very curious to see what the VAR made of it, because I thought Vite was offside. But he might have held his line from the angle. It was hard to tell, but Garcia put it in his net. Now, you were working on Wednesday night, so you obviously were at the game or watching it live, so you all missed this, but you might have heard.
Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah. So anyone that's been to BC Place know that we'd be going, the goal scorer is Ryan Raposo, Ryan. So for this one, it's the only time I've heard this. It was like, the goal scorer for the Whitecaps, Devron Garcia, Devron. It was funny, but at the same time, I thought it was a little bit shitty.
Why?
It's just, you're like mocking an inflicted person. I don't know. I just thought it was it treaded the line between tasteful and distasteful, but I laughed my bollocks off. So
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like you, Michael.
No. I mean, I find it hilarious, but a couple of other folk were like, "Oh, I'm not sure about that."
Own goal. He's back. The Irish guy back leading the scorer for.
Yes, I know they're having a fantastic start to the season. Good old Owen. 70th minute, Pedro Vite off Ryan Gauld. 77th minute, Brian White off Ryan Raposo.
Yeah, the Vite goal for me was the pick of the litter. The pass and the finish, I think it was with his right foot too, and he's left-footed.
Yeah.
I thought the movement on that and the quick finish, that was the goal of the game for me. The Vite one.
Brian White, I think JJ had the first question, or one of the first questions to him in the post-game scrum, or maybe it was Har, actually, this sounds like a Har question, saying, all the animals off your back now that you've got this goal, because apparently she's been constantly asking him about goal scoring, and she's starting to get the sense that it's pissing him off now.
Would that be the first? Or I guess you say it wouldn't be the first time.
Well, her and Brian and Jake used to have a nice little bond going with the jersey connection and everything. Yes. But yeah, I mean, he's got the goal. I was hoping that was going to start him being streaky. And we'll talk about the Dallas game in the next thing. I mean, he was lively today, just maybe didn't get the breaks. The radio crew felt he's a little bit snake bitten in front of goal. I don't know. I mean, there was a couple of spectacular saves today, but we're getting ahead of ourselves anyway.
Yeah, we need to talk about that when we get to the Dallas game.
5-0 final. Whitecaps had 27 shots to Real Espana's 10, 11 on target to their 2. 3 of the Whitecaps players made the team of the week. Ryan Raposo, who was the man of the match. I thought that was a fair one. Ryan Gauld, 2 assists. That made sense to me as well. Julian Gressel, delighted he got in, but great ball for the goal. I'm not sure I would have had him as team of the week. I watched about 3/4 of the other Champions League games, and there was a few standout performances, but hey, take it. I think it's a good thing for the Whitecaps. It's a good confidence booster to get that win and to get that kind of recognition as well.
Yeah, nice for them.
Now, after the game, it was assistant coach Emilson Soto that spoke to media, and he said they weren't writing off that second leg just yet. If the Whitecaps could score 5 goals in Vancouver, they could score 5 goals in San Pedro Sula. Well, I'm not seeing that. I think that's a bit of a stretch.
I'm not seeing that either, but, Canadian sides, giving up a lot of goals in San Pedro Sula is obviously part of Canadian history, unfortunately.
I
I
mean,
don't
the
see it.
Whitecaps.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to
No,
happen.
I mean the Whitecaps won't rest on their laurels either. They'll put a fairly strong team out there. And Real Espana showed flashes that they can cause problems. And as I say, if one of those early two chances or both of them had gone in, we'd be looking at a much different second leg. Now, Vanny has said that they won't take the second leg lightly after the game on Wednesday. But
I heard him
today,
say he's like, we're going to start all the starters originally, he said. I was like, what?
Yeah, today he was more like, there'll be changes. It'll still be a strong thing, but it'll be managed properly, as it should be. Because it's sandwiched between two big MLS games. The Dallas one today, the Galaxy one next Saturday. I mean, you've got to feel that some of the fringe guys will get some minutes there. And talking of which, this was a great game because it allowed the Whitecaps to blood Karifa Yao, JC Gando in this competition, making their Whitecaps debuts. Both gave good accounts for themselves as well, and I think getting that out of the way early for them. Yao, we spoke about this, Vanny's been quite high on him, and the way that some of these defensive plays goes, this could be a good opportunity if Yao gets maybe the nod in Honduras, or would that be a bit risky throwing someone of that inexperience into the middle?
At 5-0, man, like you have to be confident enough to take some risks like that, I think.
Yeah.
Especially if you do have some of your more, experienced, starting 11 type players on the bench.
But the whole squad's going down. They're charting down and they're going straight from Honduras to LA. Yeah. So, I mean, everyone's there. Everyone will be available. I would imagine he'll play a middling strength team, see how the game's going. If he feels that he needs to switch it up, you do. For me, you rest Ryan Gauld. You don't take that risk. Not Ryan Gauld.
I was going to say.
Ryan Gauld. I've combined them. I'm trying to make the perfect player. Yeah, I'd rest him. I wouldn't maybe have him in. I'd maybe save Gressel as well. Maybe Takaoka. We thought Hazal might get the nod for these games, but I think
at 5-0 I could see him getting in. Sorry, just for our listeners' sake, your perfect player is a combination of Ryan Gauld and Brian White?
No.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
But Brian White is, I think we talked about this in an earlier show, Vanny had said he was his favourite striker in the world.
Which says a lot.
Talking of strange decisions, Matthias Laborda got a run out at right back with Tristan Blackman in the middle. And after the game, Vanny was asked about that. It's like, why not play Blackman as a right back and Laborda in the middle? Because we thought Laborda was coming as a centre back.
Yeah, and that question was asked for two reasons. One, what you just said, people thought he was coming to be a centre back, and two, and this is where you can correct me if my understanding is wrong, Michael. Laborda has had limited experience at right back, although he can play there.
To my knowledge, yeah.
Whereas Blackman has had an abundance of experience at right back.
Yeah.
So
I'm paraphrasing Vanny's answer, but it was roughly Laborda's a centre back that can play right back. Tristan is basically a centre back that can't play right back. It is roughly what he said, and I was like,
"That's crazy."
Tristan's shown otherwise, but
yeah, totally.
I mean, Laborda, I said when he spoke at the start of the season, I mean, I'm 5'8", and he didn't seem that much bigger than me, and I was like, ooh, you're quite small for a centre-back. I know he's listed as 5'11", he didn't quite strike me as 5'11", but, I mean, he was okay. It's maybe going to be a learning curve for him. It's a dangerous one, though, if you're maybe going to have him learning right-back, Ryan Raposo learning left-back. Yeah. We'll see how that goes, but I mean, they kept a clean sheet, so you can't really knock it. Now, Emerson Soto also revealed after the game that his team had a nightmarishly long 22-hour journey to Vancouver on Monday, arriving in the wee small hours of Tuesday morning. They were severely struggling with a cold and fatigue. One of the Real Espana players collapsed in the dressing room after the game. He was taken to VGH, discharged on Thursday, then staying in the hotel as they awaited test results. The Whitecaps were fantastic, kept in touch with them. Some of the local community as well got in touch, took him to their house for dinner and watched the Champions League games as well. And him and the team doctor, at the time of recording this on Saturday night, are still in Vancouver. They went to the Dallas game on Saturday as guests of the Whitecaps. The Whitecaps invited them to the training facility on Friday. They watched training. They had lunch there as well. The Whitecaps have been excellent in all of this. Got to give absolutely full credit to them. And I couldn't help but think, as soon as he said that, we were kind of joking last week about what happened with Kyoto, and you said, "Oh, I wonder he'll be visiting in hospital this time around." Did you pay your visit, Zach?
No. No, Miner didn't get in touch this time, but Miner was a great host again, apparently. So
yeah, he does so much. He's a absolutely fantastic guy, and I do want to give full credit to the Whitecaps, the way that they dealt with this. Looks like he's made a full recovery. Everything's going to be good. They are driving down to Seattle on Sunday morning. They've got a flight from Seattle to Miami on, let me get this right, Sunday evening, and then they get into Miami and they fly from Miami to San Pedro Sula on the Monday. Now, he might actually still get back to Honduras before some of his players. The Whitecaps might actually get to Honduras before some of the Real Espana team, because the rest of the team, their nightmare trip here was an even worse nightmare going home, because their flight to Miami on Thursday morning was cancelled. They're sitting on the plane, on the tarmac, when the pilot comes over, the speaker, and says, "I'm not feeling well, I'm going to get off the plane." Then they had to disembark. The flight was cancelled. They managed to secure another flight to Dallas, but then they couldn't get out of Dallas to Honduras. Some of the squad flew back to Honduras on Saturday. Some are flying back on Sunday. Some are flying back on Monday. And their match against Real Sociedad on Sundays had to be postponed as a result.
It's crazy.
I mean, this shows the gulf that exists in CONCACAF. And I'm not saying CONCACAF should pay for charter flights for all the teams, but there has to be something in place that does not disadvantage these teams. These teams have proudly qualified for this competition. They shouldn't be disadvantaged because they can't travel the way that an MLS team or a Mexican team can jump on a charter. And also, there was issues with like visas for the Haitian team Violet that seems to have got sorted out now, but it looked at one point they might have to forfeit despite leading their actual game against Austin, which we'll come to in a sec. And it's just like crazy stuff. And CONCACAF needs to try and work something out in this regard, because teams like this should not be penalised in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it is a concern. I mean, we know from past, like a cheap, like 5-10 years ago, a cheap charter flight was $40,000. I can't imagine what it is now with all the inflation and some of the issues over gas prices or fuel prices. So yeah, to say to these teams, look, you gotta, I mean, if they made it mandatory, saying, hey, you got to use charter flights, it would be probably in some ways crippling to some of these teams.
Oh yeah, I mean, some of these teams definitely can't. One of them being like the Haitian team Violet, who I think, because of everything that's going on in Haiti and with their federation and everything, I don't think they've played a competitive game in 9 months.
Yeah.
They had to play their home game in the Dominican Republic, and they still came away with a absolutely stunning 3-0 win over Austin. I watched this one live, and they were full value for that win. Now, I could see Austin turning it around, I've got to say, in the second leg.
Were Austin, I can't remember. I've seen highlights of this, but were Austin wearing that hideous new kit they were?
I genuinely can't remember now, to be honest. I don't think they were.
LA wore the smoke jersey. LA.
Yeah.
So maybe if they wear the horrendous jersey in the return leg, they'll just throw the Haitians off, because they'll keep, like, what is that?
Just get motion sickness as they watch it going. But I mean, that was an absolutely fantastic game. The atmosphere, the Haitian band that were playing, because I watched the game. I'll mention this now. If you've got a VPN, you can watch all the Champions League games on CONCACAF's YouTube channel. Set your VPN to the UK. They're all free on YouTube. Even though I've got One Soccer, I quite like watching it on YouTube because it's easier to put it back if you want to see something. But they didn't have commentary for this one. So it was just the band playing. It was quite catchy. I was like dancing away in the living room and stuff. So I watched a big chunk of the games. Alianza from El Salvador drew 0-0 with Philadelphia. Highlight of that one was a dog running on the pitch. Always love that. Tigres and Orlando drew 0-0.
Yeah.
Now,
I saw the highlights from that one.
I've got to say, you say advantage Orlando, but again, away goal for Tigres. That's why I like being away in the second leg.
Mm-hmm.
Tigres get that away goal, and all of a sudden, pressure's on Orlando.
Yeah.
The Mexican team's not steamrollering this competition like we've seen in the past as well. I mean, if Tigres were to bow out, that would be huge. Leon, probably the best performers. They got past the Panamanians, Toro, 1-0.
On the road.
But Olympia, a 4-1 hammering of Atlas in Honduras. Now, that away goal for Atlas could still prove crucial. But Olympia, we've seen them in this competition before. They know how to play on the road and how to make life difficult. I've been looking forward to the second leg of that one, I've got to say. Montagua and Pachuca drew 0-0. You'd fancy Pachuca in the second leg. And then LAFC, very comfortable against Alajuelense.
Yeah, I saw the highlights of that one. An easy 3-0 on the smoke kit. The forest fire kit or whatever.
Did you see the LA fans? They travelled in numbers.
Yes,
they were fantastic. But I heard as well that they were being advised to leave with like 15-20 minutes of the game remaining for their own safety.
And did they?
Some did, but I don't think the bulk of them did.
I don't think all of them would, yeah.
But, I mean, that's not right either.
You want to stay together.
Yeah, that is not right that you have to go to a country and get that official message. It's like that's something else CONCACAF have to make sure. Like, you want to grow this competition, and travelling support helps everything.
Yeah.
Whether it's CPL, League One, whatever. Travelling support grows buy-in into these competitions. Totally. So if you're not feeling safe or you've got fans being warned that they might not be safe, that's got to get clamped down on ASAP. Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder, like, I don't know how many Whitecaps fans might make the trip to Honduras, but hopefully they are well looked after anyway. But
last time for the Olympia game, last time a bunch of them went, because I know some of them did some pretty cool things on their travels in terms of connecting with the local community. But
I'd said to Caitlin before the draw, I was like, if we get a good draw, I think I might go to the away leg. And it was Honduras, San Pedro Sula. I was like, you're okay.
Yeah.
But I'd also have been pissed off if I'd booked all that flights and hotel and it was a 5-0 first leg. Yeah. I'm like, well, that's a pointless game to go to.
It's never, dude, it's never a pointless game.
I know.
Cross that off your ground hopping app.
Yeah, having bags of piss thrown at me's never really been on my app. I've been to Cowdenbeath. So, after 2 good halves of football in Major League Soccer play and 2 horrible halves of football in Major League Soccer play and no complete game, that was a big confidence booster for the Whitecaps on Wednesday night.
And exactly what we talked about last week. What they needed, they went out and did it, and they did even, like I was thinking maybe 3, maybe 4 goals tops. They exceeded that. So it was a great day. It was a crowd, like 13,000 again.
Yeah, I thought that was excellent for a midweek game against Champions a team League. Which, if you're being honest, the vast majority of fans there will never have heard of in their lives.
No. Good job, I think, all around, and a real encouragement. And again, regardless of the potential impact on the league play, it could soften the blow of some of this early unfortunate start, or hopefully.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the big thing. The big question now was, could the Whitecaps bring that 5-goal, 5-star form into a much tougher opposition at BC Place on Saturday afternoon in the shape of FC Dallas? We'll be back talking about that game after this.
Hey, I'm Julian Gressel, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's our Artist of the Month here at AFTN for the month of March from Luxembourg. Skinhead band The Skinflicks. That's a B-side from their 2021 single Won't Bend the Knee. And it's a reworking of their song Zach, I Hate Hippies, which was from their 2000 album, Lies, Damned Lies and Skinhead Stories. And that was a more updated version, I Hate Hipsters. We all do.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, you've always been saying to me, get more European skinhead bands on the show, so that's what we've done.
No, I've never said that to you.
Well, since you came back from hanging about with your German friends at the World Cup.
No. I didn't hang out with any skinheads at the World Cup.
Oh, did you not get your tickets for the Serbia game?
No. I did go to the one Serbia game, but no, I didn't get them from the Serbian Ultra guys. No.
That was a good decision,
yeah.
I think, in the end.
I felt good about that, yeah.
The Skinflicks, as I mentioned, a great band from Luxembourg. All their stuff is actually about to get re-released on CD at the end of the month from a German record label called Fan Total. And I'm really torn because I want to get all the stuff on CD because I still love my CDs, as I was going to say, as you can see behind me, but you are listening to this on the podcast, so...
I can see them.
You can see them, that's the main thing. I play them in my car. But the problem is that this company only ships to Canada by DHL because they want to track it, naturally enough. DHL always hit you with import duties and a fee as well. So I'm kind of torn as to what to do about this. But anyway, we'll see. That's my problem to deal with. It's a shame, really, that the Whitecaps weren't playing Austin today, playing a song, I Hate Hipsters, because we know that Austin is full of hipsters. Don't think you can say that about Dallas. Dallas is, maybe 20 years in the past? I don't know. Never been there. Just what I know from watching the TV show in the late 70s and 80s. Lots of oil and showers. But yeah, FC Dallas came to BC Place on Saturday afternoon to take on the Whitecaps, having not beaten the Whitecaps since 2018. 1-0 draw. And for me, Zach, I think that's a pretty fair result. I mean, disappointing to drop 2 points at home, naturally enough. 5 points dropped at home in the first two games, which is very concerning. But I think a 1-0 draw, well, at least a draw and a share of the points was fair today.
So this is how I feel, Michael. I think in one respect, yeah, it seems relatively fair. If you're Vancouver, I think you feel like you could have won based on the number of chances you created. I think if you're FC Dallas, I think you feel you should have won based on the quality of chances that they created. Yeah, in the end, I guess a fair result is probably the right analysis.
It's an interesting game to break down because my notes that was taken during it, at the game today, a lot written down in the first half. Second half, pretty disappointing half of football, I've got to say. And it was a disappointing start for the Whitecaps as well. Like, Dallas came out on the front foot and they were dominating. They'd kept the pressure on after an attack, and they'd kept players up. They were moving the ball around well. It was a well-moved goal. Well-worked goal. They moved the ball about well. 5 minutes in. Horrible defending again. As the ball comes in, Tafari sends in a great cross, and it's met well by Sebastian Iabaga. But, and as Vanny talked about afterwards, defending was terrible. And in this case, Tristan Blackman, the man on that side of the ball, is the one that should have snuffed that out. Should never have come onto the head of Iabaga. And I've got to agree with that. When I saw it, I was like, Ranko will probably some focal point fingers at him because the Dallas player jumps in between the two of them. But there was nothing Ranko could do in that. It was Blackman that let that ball sail over his head, and it was just more horrible defending from the Whitecaps that we've seen in every game so far in MLS play.
So even though this was a second, or might even say a third phase of a set piece, I think that you can't, like, if Steve was here, I don't think you would talk about zonal marking in the same way, because
No.
the play had moved on so much. So Vanny's, I think, analysis of after the match was that we were not on the right positioning. He referenced that kind of where his defenders were. But yeah, the Dallas center back just found a sweet spot, right, kind of almost in between the two defenders, where he had the space to rise and easily not home. But you're right. I think both the center backs will feel like they could have positioned themselves better to defend the cross and to defend the man in the middle of the box.
I mean, I'm quite high interest in Blackman. I think he's a great player. I think he's been a really good addition to the Whitecaps, but that's 2 poor games I felt from him at BC Place this year. I don't think he's quite at that level that we need him to be at. And I mean, it was a bad goal to give up. 2 minutes later, though, Dallas nearly made it 2, and the marking on this was even worse. The ball comes to Paul Arriola, and everyone knows how dangerous he is at both ends of the park, it turns out. But he was played in, wide open at the back of the box, acres of space, and I think he does poorly on it. I mean, good save by Takaoka, but when you've got that much time and space, you are expecting that guy to put that in the back of the net. I certainly was as soon as he got it.
Totally. Like I said before, based on the quality chances that Dallas made, they'll feel hard done by not to have won. And that chance is the best chance that they created, and really totally should have been a goal. And I even said to you, I think before the game, or in the very early parts of the game, I messaged you saying, Dallas's front 5 are quite impressive from an MLS standpoint. Their back 5 and their keeper are less known, or maybe less quality, or less recognition, less experience, whatever. But their front 5 are impressive. And it was kind of weird that, Arriola misses that chance. We're going to talk about him at the other end of the pitch in a moment. And also the goal came from a central defender.
Yeah. Then there was the Whitecaps then started to take control. I think after that chance, that it was all Whitecaps for a big part of the game. And White had a chance that it was deflected into the side netting. The folk in the crowd thought it had gone in. The music started, and I'm going, it's clearly not a goal, but it didn't even get a corner. It did take a deflection, I felt.
White was really not super happy about that.
Yeah. But then 3 minutes after that, a little flick, and what a save from pace to turn that around the post.
From White again?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't think the save was as spectacular.
It wasn't spectacular as one later on from him, but it was a good save. It was a strong save.
It was a good save. Again, for me, and I know he had another good chance later, but Brian White, I'm not surprised at his form. Like, this is kind of what I expected, after this, going into last year. I thought he was going to his production was kind of what's the phrase? Return to the mean, or whatever, regression to the mean. Like he way overperformed in his first half season with Vancouver, and last year he was more maybe in line with what he had produced before, perhaps a little bit below. And this year it feels like he's kind of in a similar vein of form, where he'll get in some good spaces, he'll have some good chances, but his finishing lets him down. And I know the first one was deflected, but so you can't really blame him on that. That stab, I think, was a nice stab, a good effort, whatever. But you still feel like a player in that part of the structure of the team, both on the pitch and in their salary budget, needs to be really producing far more than he is. And it was unfortunate for him that the goal he scored in the Champions League midweek didn't help translate into better form in the league at the weekend.
Now, I mentioned the radio guys had said that they feel Brian White is snake bitten just now, and I think that's just too easy a phrase to throw about. It's more about, like, he is getting in the right positions, and again, it's easy to say, his confidence is not there, but he's a confident guy. He knows he can score. It's just things are just not coming off in the same way whether he's just not hitting it at the right time, or someone comes up with a great save, which later on at the end of the half there was another great save. But you've got to hope that one striker, right now I couldn't care less if it's White or if it's Cordova, which seems to be the way to pronounce him. I've been calling him Cordova, but I'm going with the radio guys. They said Cordova, so we'll go with that. I don't care which one it is. One of them needs to find some form and start getting on the end of these chances that are getting created, or this is going to be a tough start for the Whitecaps again. And then we come to the minute of the match that is the very telling one. 33rd minute, Dallas could have gone 2-0 up. They don't. The Whitecaps go up the pitch and it's level at 1 apiece. Now, the 33rd minute, it was crazy because Areola sends a corner in, and once again, Iabagha is allowed to jump unchallenged to meet the ball, and he heads it off the bar. I don't know when they're going to learn to pick these guys up.
Yeah, this is where we can talk about zonal marking again, and then not being in the right spot, not picking up the right person, or just being where they were supposed to be, but the attacking team finding the space, right? Like they're.
It was a pinpoint delivery, and again, Iabagha rose well to meet it, but he was allowed to just rise. And there's been a few goals like that this weekend, I've got to say. I mean, we'll come to the goal that Portland got when I do my roundup, but that guy rose with 5 St. Louis players around him unchallenged. So this wasn't the worst one of those that we've seen this weekend, but the Caps have to do something to nip this in the bud now, because there's far too many free headers, and teams are going to watch this and they're going to be like, let's just whip crosses into the box, because we've got a good chance that you're going to just out jump a Whitecaps defender and get your head in it, and then who knows what happens.
I think any team who's doing any kind of sufficient proper scouting of the Whitecaps this year, for a game, playing them in MLS this year, is absolutely going to be coming back and saying, look, if we work on some set plays where we can get movement and get their zonal marking kind of off, get them off balance, like we saw once, was it the quick the quick free kick, I think it was, or the short corner where you get everyone moving and then put it in the box. Teams are totally going to continue to do that if they're smart. I mean, so many goals, a significant amount of goals are created from set plays in football in general. And if you're giving away so many free headers, teams are going to attack that as much as possible if they're smart.
Yeah. But the Whitecaps survived, capitalised on it, went up the pitch, got the equaliser, and it was an interesting one. Javane Brown, he's got a fucking long throw. And it came off to full effect as he launched a long throw, flicked on very nicely, it has to be said, by Ryan Gauld. I thought he did excellently with that. The ball's coming to the back post. Areola, under pressure from Gauld, makes a complete tit of himself, puts it in the Dallas net. Back on level terms. Own goal takes the lead in the scoring for the season.
Own goal, 2 goals, right?
Yeah.
Top of the charts, right?
Yeah.
It's not even tied, right? In all competitions.
No, he's leading.
Yeah.
Take that, Lucas Cavallini.
A nice throw, nice flick on. And Areola, just the presence of Gauld makes him act foolishly, right? If Gould's not there, or maybe if it's not Ryan Gauld, maybe it's Brian White, or maybe it's someone else, he doesn't take the action he did. But I think, not even from the previous chance, but the chance where he should have scored, and you combine that with this, he's almost like the most significant player in the match, in my opinion.
Yeah, pretty much. And then the last action of the first half, right on the stroke of half time, and this was the save of the game. Martin Pays, wow. Acrobatic stop to deny Brian White. It was a fantastic save.
This was the header, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good save, but again, it was the best save of the game. But if you're Brian White, like that needs to go in, right? Like you need to be scoring those. You need to be not be snake bit.
Yes. Second half wasn't a great half of football at all. Dallas in the 78th minute had a great chance, and again, I was like screaming at this. The ball comes to Marco Farfan on the edge of the box, first time volley. He's wide open.
Oh yeah,
wide open, and it just flashes over, and that was just shocking marking. 90th minute into stoppage time. The tackle of the match for me. Andres Kubis takes the ball off the feet of the Dallas player in the box as he's just like lining up to take a shot. It was a crucial one. Goes out for a corner. The corner comes in as well, and the chance just flashes wide, and you're like, whew, that's a close call for the Whitecaps. And then with basically the last chance of the game, deep into the 4th minute of stoppage time, ball goes across the Dallas goal. Cordova running into the back post, outstretched, just can't get on it, just can't direct it in. Agonisingly close for the Whitecaps. And it ends 1-1.
Now, I know some people, especially in the game, were not happy with the refereeing or some of his decisions.
Yeah, I know he said it on the radio, he said it in the post-game presser. I didn't think the referee had that shocking a game. There was maybe a few inconsistencies. What referees don't have that. There was definitely something that happened in the stoppage time that really pissed Vanny off. And I think it was just he was wanting consistency that maybe wasn't there.
So Peter Zimmerman, friend of the show and president of the Southsiders, his tweet of Vancouver 1, Dallas 1, referee 1.
Yeah.
Was that maybe a bit harsh?
I'd need to watch it back, to be honest. Yeah. I didn't come away from that feeling, the referee played a part in that. I was away to say there was that one incident where the guy got booked and there was a tackle shortly after, and then they're all like, how is that not a booking? It's exactly the same tackle. But then I realised that was the VMSL game I was at afterwards. Because I left BC Place right in the final whistle, bombed it in the car up to Burnaby Lake, took in the VMSL Imperial Cup semi-finals, so it's all blending into one now. But, yep, first point of the season for the Whitecaps. They've got a tough schedule coming up now. You've got Espana midweek, you've got the Galaxy in LA on Saturday, then you're travelling to Minnesota the Saturday after that. We've talked about what we think will happen in the Espana game, and I think it's going to be the full-strength team that's out of the Galaxy. Now, the Galaxy below the Whitecaps in the standings right now, and it's a big game. If the Whitecaps can get something on the road, I think that's a huge one for them. I do have this fear that they're going to finish March on a solitary point, which is disappointing. But the way they've been playing and the way that Dallas had taken the Galaxy apart last week, I was thinking it could have been 0. So I guess small benefits and things, just 1 point maybe. 1
point in the league, but advanced in the CONCACAF Champions. Yeah.
If they can get it going and get some result, we'll take that. But the Whitecaps currently sitting 11th in the West. Let's have a look around what happened at the rest of the MLS Western Conference this weekend. So the Whitecaps Dallas game was the first of the MLS West action this weekend. Going to round up what else played out in the Western Conference on Saturday. One game still to come. LAFC host New England. LAFC in Costa Rica playing on Thursday night, so their game pushed back to this Sunday. All the other Western teams were in action this week. And it was Cincinnati 1, Seattle 0. The first loss of the season for the Sounders. They went into this weekend leading the West. They come out of it in second place in the West. Brenner with the only goal of the game for Cincinnati. Well, the only one that counted anyway, and that was in the 63rd minute. Nick Hagglund got sent off in the 83rd minute for Cincinnati. I feel it was a bit harsh. I think there was another man that was over-covering, but a VAR review saw the decision upheld and off he went. Seattle thought they had snatched a point in stoppage time, but was called back for a foul in the box by Gomez. So the first loss of the season for the Sounders, and a big home win for Cincinnati, and you saw what it meant to their coaching staff at the end of this one. That was a decent game. Not sure how much you can say about the next game. Sporting Kansas City 0, LA Galaxy 0. Sporting Kansas City still goalless in 2023, but it's certainly not for the lack of trying. 30 shots they got off in this one, 11 of them on target. They couldn't find a way into the back of the net. The Galaxy they were no match for this Kansas City side at all. And reading the comments afterwards from Peter Vermees, he's happy with where his team are, the chances that they're creating. He's not overly worried right now because he does feel that if they can just start to find that clinical finish in front of goal, the goals are going to come and they're going to push up the table. They've got back-to-back draws now. They just have to now find their scoring boots and try and build on some really solid offensive performances that they have put in. Minnesota, fresh off a bye last week, drew 1-1 against New York Red Bulls in a snowy home opener for Minnesota. Elongwane had a header save but poked home the rebound in the 18th minute to give Minnesota the lead. But New York tied it up and secured a point 4 minutes into the second half. Andreas Reyes, great movement and an equally great header in off a corner, 1-1 in that one. It was Nashville 2, Montreal 0. Montreal still pointless, rooted to the bottom of the East with Charlotte after their third straight loss. 2 good goals from Nashville in this one. Schaffelberg with the first in the 37th minute. Rocket of a strike from him. The ex-TFC man coming back to haunt his old Canadian rivals. And then Washington sealed the deal in the 89th. Montreal unable to get any shots on target in this one. And I think there's got to be some concern now for Montreal. The losses that they've suffered in the off-season, they're just not firing on all cylinders just now, and it looks like they're a shadow of the fantastic team that they were last year. I mean, they did get off to a slow start last year as well and turned it around. Right now, this team is not looking the same animal, and I think it could be a long, hard, tough season for the Montreal fans. It was RSL 1, Austin 2. All the goals in the first half of this one. John Gallagher put Austin ahead in the 9th minute with a lovely long-range rocket. Justin Glad levelled in the 22nd. Then 11 minutes later, Owen Wolf, son of the boss, making his dad proud, firing home the winner. Just allowed to run unchallenged, get in front of goal and fire one off from about 22 yards out. His first MLS goal and match winner. What a way to do it. It was San Jose 1, Colorado 0. Last week's Caps conquerors made it back-to-back wins. A beautiful dipper from the edge of the box from Christian Espinoza in the 78th minute was the difference maker between these two teams, aided by a slight deflection. Colorado, another team this weekend, didn't get a shot on target. Only blight on the night for the Quakes was a 93rd minute sending off for Jamie Montero. But back-to-back wins now for the Quakes, who were basically just a stunning stoppage time performance from Atlanta away from being 3-0. I don't really think anyone saw the Quakes doing that this season. I know I certainly didn't. And the last game we're going to talk about is another team who are 3-0, and that's the New Boys from St. Louis City. Their second away win of the season. It was a come-from-behind victory as well. Long trip off to Portland for this one. Portland got off to the great start. 3 minutes in, Zach McGraw rose above 5 St. Louis players. This was like, Whitecaps-esque marking to head home from a corner. Absolutely shocking defending, but full credit to St. Louis. We've seen the fight already from this team this season. They fought back. Jared Stroud equalised in first half stoppage time. Kyle Hybert then won the game for St. Louis. It came after strong pressure from Portland, who were pushing to go ahead, but St. Louis went up the pitch, took the lead in the 76th. We talked about Portland's goal being horrible defending by St. Louis. This was horrible Timbers defending. I mean, the Timbers look very susceptible to crosses in the start of the season. A ball came in from a free kick. It was allowed to run all the way to the back. Hybert, standing on the corner of the 6-yard box, gets a head on it. It's not even that strong a header. It really should have been kept out by a defender or the keeper. It wasn't. Ends in the back of the net. 2-1 for St. Louis. And stunningly, St. Louis City, the expansion side, top of the Western Conference, 100% record, 3 wins from 3, plus 4 goal difference, and next week, if they can get a 4th win, they'll make history as the first expansion side to get 4 wins to kick off their inaugural season. With a logjam after that, Seattle, Austin and San Jose all on 6 points, Dallas and Minnesota on 4, LAFC, Portland and Salt Lake on 3. LAFC, of course, could add to their tally on Sunday night. That's the 9 teams in those playoff places just now. Then you've got Kansas City in 10th on 2, Whitecaps in 11th on 1, LA Galaxy in 12th on 1. Those 2 teams, of course, meet next weekend. Big game for both. Colorado on 1 and 13th, and Houston, bottom of the pile, pointless, looking to try and kickstart their season. Currently 3 teams unbeaten in the West, that is St. Louis, Minnesota and LAFC. Quick look at the Eastern Conference, and it's Atlanta and Nashville and Cincinnati leading the way in that on 7 points apiece. Montreal 14th, no points, no goals, -5 goal difference, struggling just now. And just to find a little bit of Canadian content, Toronto made it back-to-back draws, moving up to 2 points for the season. They're currently sitting 11th now in the Eastern Conference. DeAndre Kerr fired TFC ahead in what was their home opener on Saturday afternoon, the 25th minute. But Medranda levelled in the 75th for Columbus. Initially flagged for offside, reviewed, VAR saw he was on, 1-0 draw. TFC struggling, but they do have the most points from any of the Canadian teams. 2 for them, 1 for the Whitecaps. Just 3 points from a possible 27 now for the 3 Canadian teams. Not a great start for Canada. They all need to turn things around pretty quickly. But that is our MLS West wrap-up. It's not it, though, for our Whitecaps chat. We're going to be back with our feature interview on this week's episode, and that's with Whitecaps captain Ryan Gauld. We'll be back with that after this.
Hi, I'm Ryan Gauld, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, we're going back to Fife in Scotland. My good friend Doug Perry's band, Got Need. You may have heard them on the show a couple of episodes ago. They are also the band that do the theme song for my East Fife podcast, Glory Days of Gold. They released a 3-track EP last month called Filtered Smiles. We played you the first track from it last time around. This is the third of the 3 tracks. It's called Times of Yesterday. It's an absolute belter, as I mentioned before. Check them out on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your music from. Add the EP to your playlist if you can. Got Need is the band's name. Filtered Smile is the name of the EP. You won't be disappointed. Someone else that seldom disappoints is another Scot, Ryan Gauld. Goes without saying what a key player he is to the Whitecaps, and it's been an interesting start to the season so far for Ryan. In that season opener, the loss to Real Salt Lake, he led the team, he led the league with 7 key passes. Next week, though, in San Jose, no key passes at all. Wednesday night against Real Espana, 2 assists on the night, made the CONCACAF Champions League Team of the Week. And the latest game against Dallas on Saturday afternoon was key in putting the pressure on Paul Arriola that saw him turn the ball into his own net. We kind of have seen it in the last couple of seasons. If Ryan Gauld goes, so the Whitecaps go. And we know what a key player he is for the side right now. Got a chance to sit down with Ryan this past week just to chat a little bit about the start to the season. Now, I will mention that we recorded this on Tuesday, so it was after the first 2 MLS games, but before the Espana game and before the Dallas game. So a couple of the things we talk about, they're not dated, but they're not fully up to date with how the games have gone. But go stick the kettle on, grab your biscuit of choice, sit back and enjoy our feature interview for this episode with the Whitecaps captain, Ryan Gauld. Ryan, last time we talked, I half jokingly was asking about you playing for Canada, and then it kind of made it into the Scottish papers. So we'll see what we get to go in the Scottish papers for this one. So I didn't know folk in Scotland listened to this, but there we go. I haven't spoken to you this year, so first thing I want to ask you, I know we haven't got a lot of time, but I want to ask you about this. How was your trip to Oregon?
It was really good. We had a very good time. Seeing all the different little towns and all those little seaside villages, and just getting up to traveling and wandering about and stuff. It was really good. We had a good time.
Did you have a particular favourite?
Obviously Cannon Beach was lovely. And then we stopped in Tillamook at the factory, and that was I thought that was really cool.
I do as well. Like every time we go down there, we come back with a ton of cheese.
Oh, absolutely! We came away with heaps of cheese. But yeah, that was really good. And then there was one more. Coos Bay. Coos Bay was really nice.
Yeah. Did the dogs enjoy it, I take it?
Yeah, they loved it. They had a great time.
Brilliant. I guess I should start talking about football with you. So, first of all, preseason, I was a bit worried when you went over to Spain that you'd missed the hot weather and you wouldn't want to come back. But speaking to a few of the guys, they've all spoken about how different the pre-season felt this year. Vanny spoke about it as well. How did you feel about pre-season?
In comparison to last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a big difference in terms of the amount of games we played, the intensity of the training, and the facilities as well. I think just when you kind of look at everything that was everything involved that you could look at. I think everything was, a step above in comparison to last year. And I mean, unfortunately, it's not showed in terms of results this year, but we're all sure that it's coming. I think it took us a long time last year to even, put in a good performance, but we've been decent across the two games. So I think the preseason has set us up in a good way for what's to come for the rest of the season.
Yeah, this is probably going to go out after the Dallas game now because we had our last show out yesterday. I might bring one out midweek. I don't know yet. So some of this might already have changed by the time that this comes out. But the results down in Palm Springs, like everything went really well. Everything was looking good. What do you think's been the difference in taking that into the season now? I mean, I'd say there's been two really good halves of football and two not good halves, and it's just trying to put together that complete game, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Both games have been games of two halves when especially the Salt Lake. You look at the first half, we dominated that, and we could have been up 3 or 4 at half time, but we let them back into it in the second half, and I think a big part of it's going to be, we're looking more like a team that's capable of holding on to the ball a little bit better, and just generally being more in control of the game. And I think, with more of that, there's definitely good things to come for us. And I think the thing we need to concentrate on just now is capitalizing on that and scoring more goals. Because I'll go back to the Salt Lake game, it was like incredible the amount of chances that we did manage to create, and we only got one goal. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, I think okay, we're 2 games, 0 points, but a few of us were actually speaking about it. It was just yesterday. Man United had 0 points after 2 games, and they've been flying since. So, you don't make the playoffs in the first 2 games. It's going to be a long, long season, and we're all still very confident that we're capable of having that good season.
As long as you don't let 7 goals in one of these games coming up, then I'll take the Man United comparison.
Yeah, touch wood, that never happened.
This, like the start to the season, like for you personally, like in RSL, I had someone message me during the game going, it's like they're moving the ball around like Barcelona, and the midfield certainly does look better. And you saw that with the goal against San Jose. It was a beautifully worked goal. You had 7 key passes against RSL, but then none against San Jose. What do you think that difference was? Was it just that you were kind of marked a little bit differently in that second?
Yeah, that's down to me. I wasn't getting in the best positions and getting on the ball and being as influential as I want to be. So I would say that's just more to do with me. I need to be better, and even if the game's not completely going our way, I still need to try and find a way to get on it and make things happen for us. So that's something I've said before the season that I need to be better at, because I think the majority of my individual good performances last year were all at home. So I need to figure out a way to take that on the road and put in good performances, not just once every 2 weeks, but every week.
Talking about like road form, I didn't check this stat. I saw it on Twitter, so obviously it's going to be 100% accurate. But the team hasn't won on the road since June last year. I mean, I didn't think it was as bad as that, but I mean, what's that down to, do you think?
I think it's hard to pinpoint, what that's down to and what causes that. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say because I don't think it's just, we can look at that in different ways as well, because I think when we played the Eastern teams last year, I don't believe we won a game against any of the Eastern teams last year. So there's another thing that we can improve on. But yeah, away from home, we did show in little spells that we're more than capable of putting in performances on the road. Because you think back to second half of Nashville, we dominated and we got a goal in the last 5 minutes to get a draw. I think in Cincinnati we had a much better second half. So and San Jose, that first half, we're capable of going on the road and putting in good performances. We just need to be more consistent with it. And yeah, it's tough to put your finger on, but it just comes down to all of us needing to be more consistent and kind of rising to the occasion a little bit more.
Axel and Vanny, they've made so much about the slow start last year and being great for the last 26 games, and that wanting to get off to a fast start this year, which obviously hasn't happened yet. But I mean, arguably, we should have 4 points on the board. So I mean, you could look at it that way as well. But knowing that was the case last year, does it put more pressure on the team when these wins aren't coming? It is a long season. There's extra playoff places at stake now. But is there a feeling of, not panic because it's so early, but are you feeling a pressure right now?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a panic, but it's in the back of our heads knowing that we went on a really good run on the last 26 games and we left it down to the last game to give ourselves a shot at getting into the playoffs, and we know that we don't want to be in that situation again. So we know that getting points early is going to be important, and we need to start with that on Saturday against Dallas, getting points on the board, because we can't leave it late again and ask so much of each other and ourselves. So yeah, we're definitely going to need to, I would say, the performances we've had in the first 45 minutes of the games, we need to carry them on to the second half and start getting results sooner rather than later.
As a player, what do you make of the new playoff format this year? Like the best of 3, hopefully, is what we're going to find ourselves in. But like, what do you make of that?
I'm not crazy on it, to be honest. I don't like the whole, what is it now, 9th place also makes it.
Yeah, so 8 and 9th will play off to get in, and then once you're in the top 8, it's a best of 3 series, which I'm not a fan of either, to be honest. I loved the straight knockout. I thought it was exciting.
Yeah, I thought so too. And yeah, it's just the fact for me, maybe coming from British football and European football, where it's just a straight off league, and then here, you can finish in. So you could finish in 9th and still win come the end. It's a bit strange. And yeah, the best of 3, I liked the single knockout as well. I think it made it a one-off game and it made it really exciting. But yeah, we'll see how things go this year. We just need to make sure that we're there, and then we can say how we feel from being there instead of just from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, if it's a good season, you could find yourself playing over 50 games. Does that excite you, or does that make you think, geez, my body's going to be like shot at the end of this?
No, I think it's a good thing. We all want to, if you ask any player what would they rather, less games, more training, or more games, less training, you're always going to take more games. And at the end of the day, the more games that we're playing, it means we're being more successful. So I think if you ask everyone, we want to be playing as many games as possible. And also, we've got a pretty big squad as well. So, we're all ready for it. And we know it's going to be a long season. Everyone's going to be called upon. So, as long as we play as many games as possible and it means we're winning, then I think everyone's going to be happy.
That's true. I mean, 4 different competitions this year. This will come out after the first leg of the Real Espana game, but how much does Champions League excite you? Because I know you never got to play in that or the Europa League over in Europe. So is this like just a whole experience that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the experience of it. Obviously, it's a little bit different as well in terms of it's just straight knockout games and it's not the group stages like you get in Europe, but it's still exciting nonetheless. And we're all really looking forward to the challenge that's ahead, and the possibility that we're going to get to maybe play against teams from different countries and go and see what their style of play is like and test ourselves. It's really exciting, and hopefully we can get through these first games against Espana and see what comes from there.
I don't know how much of like CONCACAF football you've seen over the year. but it can be different. I'm trying to pick my words nicely, but basically it's like some of the refereeing's like all over the place, and some of the atmospheres are interesting. What?
But like,
Yeah, I mean, have you got in your head what you're expecting in Honduras?
We know that's going to be a difficult one, because obviously the temperatures and humidity and stuff, it's going to be a bit wild. But at the same time, it's exciting, to get to go and test ourselves like that. A few of the guys were saying that have played down there in Canada, youth teams or whatever. They've played in Central America, like how tough the conditions are. So that I think that puts a little bit more emphasis on tomorrow as well, for us to get a result. And yeah, it's just an exciting time. It's going to be exciting to get the opportunity to go down there and test ourselves.
What would you say is the toughest place you've ever played in? I didn't get a chance to look at where you'd played with Scotland in under 19 and under 21, but like, where would you think is the toughest place that you can remember playing in?
In terms of like atmosphere, or
yeah, just kind of like everything like
together?
Logistics and just the crowd atmosphere and maybe weather, just anything really. Like, if you were to look back and you think, oh, do you know what? That was probably one of the worst places I think I've played.
Where would that be? In terms of like atmosphere and stuff, I've Benfica and Porto are like, they're intimidating. Because you feel like every time you touch the ball, you've got all these people, everyone's against you, and that's the atmosphere. And from there to here is completely different. The same with Celtic Park, actually, in Scotland. But I think over here, it's different. The humidity down in Texas is, I would say, it's tougher than the altitude in like Colorado. Houston's maybe the toughest conditions I've played in so far. Just that humidity kills me. That's a tough.
It's like I want to go down to as many stadiums as possible, and I've not been to any of the Texas ones because I think the weather's going to kill me if I go down there. Like, I want to see Austin Stadium; it looks amazing.
Yeah,
at the same time, I don't think I can handle all the heat. Last thing, you're wearing the captain's armband this year. What does that mean to you? And how do you approach the games any different? Your mindset, or is it just you've always been a leader on the park and it just comes natural to you?
Yeah, I don't think I've changed anything about me in particular. It's just I try and kind of lead by example on the pitch. I'm not the kind of guy that's gonna slaughter people and go through people all the time, but I try to help everyone as much as I can on the pitch, and that's something I feel like I've always tried to do. Whether I'm a captain or not. And yeah, just trying to help the team as much as I can, and help the boys in any way possible. And maybe it adds a little bit more responsibility in terms of doing my job on the pitch. But I would say I welcome that.
That's superb. I will let you go now. The last interview I did was for my East Fife podcast with a guy that played against you in the 2012 Youth Cup final. He was with Queen of the South. You were playing for Dundee United.
Beat us 5-4 or 4.
He said you guys were in control, and then you got taken off, and then they went and won.
I think they scored twice. I think I was 15-year-old. I wasn't ready for extra time. My body couldn't handle it.
So, he said to mention that the next time I spoke to you. So.
Aye, brilliant. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Anyway, cheers so much, Ryan. Let you go get your lunch, and yeah, good luck tomorrow against Espana, and good luck on Saturday against Dallas.
Cheers, mate. Thanks very much.
Cheers, man. Take care. Bye. Great stuff from Ryan there. And I mean, it's wonderful to hear that he holds himself to such high standards. He knows it's on him. I think he does feel a little bit of the pressure on his shoulders that if he performs, the team performs. And for me right now, him and Julian Gressel, the two standout performers for the Whitecaps this year. He's looking forward to that trip to Honduras. Not sure that he's going to start that game, but just to get that whole Champions League experience. He didn't get to experience the Champions League or the Europa League over in Europe. So this is going to be a great occasion for him. And let's hope he can just get up and running, get some more assists, get some goals on the board, and have the season that we all know that he is capable of. But that is it for the Whitecaps chat for the show. We've saved the last part to talk about one of the big talking points in Canadian soccer this week, and that was the 4 Canadian women's national team players that headed to Ottawa to take part and give testimony to the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage on Thursday. And we'll be back dissecting some of what came out of that after this.
Hi, I'm Stephanie LeVay, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the final part of this episode of the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, from Glasgow, Scotland, it's a new wave duo with a song taken from their only studio album that was released in 1985, a self-titled affair. This was a single that was released the year before, 1984, reached number 5 in the UK charts. The band is called Strawberry Switchblade. The song, Since Yesterday. After playing Got Need in the last part with their song Times of Yesterday, I thought, oh, what other Yesterday songs is there? And then this one immediately popped into my head. Really catchy number. The band known for wearing their polka dot dresses. It's a great song. A lot of you have probably never heard this in your life, but check them out. Very good band from the 80s. So for this final part of the show, I don't know how long this part could go on for. I mean, this could be a nice, succinct 20 minutes. It could be a ranty 40. It could be a super ranty hour. Let's just see where it takes us, Zach. Because we're going to talk about the 4 women's national team players that headed to Ottawa on Thursday to give testimony to the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage at the Parliament in Ottawa. Janine Becky, Christine Sinclair, Sophie Schmidt and Quinn taking part in that committee meeting. Now, I want to start this section, and I think it's important to do this, by reiterating that we 100% back the Canadian women national team's quest for pay equality and fair treatment from the CSA. We back the men as well in their pay dispute. I don't think it needs saying, but I just want to reiterate that because this has become such a fractious topic, Zach, and I've read a lot of stuff online. I listened to the Footy Prime podcast because you had said you'd listen to it, and you said, oh, you should listen to that. So I had to listen to that, and I mean they said the same thing. The danger that I see in this just now is the way that some of the messaging is getting skewed. It's certain quarters, and not everyone, and certainly not the women, but it's kind of skewing it that it's a battle between the women's national team and the men's national team, as well as the battle between the women's national team and the CSA. That is not good for anyone. This sport just now needs to be united. The men and the women's national teams need to be united. The national team and the domestic game needs to be united. And something I learned very early on after moving to Canada is the Canadian game is just full of self-interests, and unification is not really a word that I think you can use too often, Zach, to describe Canadian soccer.
No, I mean, not at all. I mean, you don't have to be in the community long to see that. And yeah, I think even just my conversation the other day with David Osted about, what's the best for the game and how things can be done or should be done for the betterment of the players and for efficiency and with funds being spent the right kind of way when it comes to player development and all that kind of stuff. It was just a reminder of, some of the uphill battles we have with the game here and how people will do all that they can to hold on to their piece of the pie, if you will. That might not be what's best for the growth of the game. And yeah, I just to reiterate what you said, I long for these the same things. I long for the pay equity. That's great. Or pay equality, paying the same thing, being treated in the same way, having the same kind of benefits and preparation and all these things. I think they're essential for both the men's and the women's team. There are so many layers to this conversation. And I think one of the hard parts of this, Michael, which we've talked about even before these issues, is that we're talking about international football, but we're talking about men's and women's international football. And this is not an apples to apples. Everything can't be compared apples to apples.
They're very different animals. And the women's game is growing around the world, and it's fantastic to see. But they are not going to catch up the men that's been going and had more investment and everything for so much longer, as quickly as a lot of folk are wanting to catch up. I'm not saying that's right. It's just it's the reality. It's where the money in the game is just now. Just like a fledgling league, I don't know, the Dutch league, the Belgium league. It's not going to catch up with La Liga, Serie A, the Premiership, because those other leagues have had more investment and more money put into them over the years. The topics that are up for discussion in general, but at this committee meeting, they're huge issues. And I think they're ones that I hope everyone is fully behind. And it basically boils down to three things, really. Equality, equity, and safe sport. Now, one of the issues I had with this committee meeting, Zach, was because they were covering all three issues in the one meeting, it felt like it was all over the place. It was a mishmash of raising all the different concerns at different times and different questions. I would much rather have had 3 sessions, one for each of those topics, either on the same day or on different days, where each topic is looked at fully, explored fully, discussed properly, with all the issues together in one segment, so to speak. Otherwise, stuff gets lost. And I think that was a danger in this. Because it was all over the place, people that aren't as clued in the game here are going to have come away from that thinking, what was all that about at times?
Oh, absolutely. And to be fair, there is some crossover, but I think you're right. even as you went, parliamentarian to parliamentarian, they were asking about completely different things without even maybe clarifying that they were shifting gears. So if you were watching and if the general Canadian public, if they were watching this, I think might have been very not confused, but you're right. There's such a wide breadth of things being talked about. It would have been better to maybe focus them in, or even within the meeting, even within the hearing, if you're going to do just one hearing, say, okay, we are first only going to take questions about, safe sport or whatever. Next, we're only about equality, equity, whatever, and breaking it down that way. Because it was a little bit too it was like throwing darts at a dartboard. It was kind of like everywhere.
Not if you're a good dart player.
Right, totally.
And these people in the committee were not good dart players.
Not good dart players, man. No. Oh yeah, they were not.
Now,
good.
I don't take much interest in Canadian politics until one of the parties comes out with a firm stance on Scottish independence. I don't really have a lot of interest. Plus, you guys don't let me vote, which I think is shocking.
Well, do you have to become a citizen, right?
Yeah, but I pay my taxes. I should be allowed to vote. Caitlin was allowed to vote in Scotland, and she wasn't a Scottish citizen.
Yeah, but they'll take anyone.
Yeah,
right?
That is very true. But yeah, I don't take a lot of interest in Canadian politics. So I haven't watched one of these kind of committee meetings. But a lot of folk told me afterwards, this is typical stuff from Canadian government committee meetings where clueless people are asking questions about topics that they don't know very much about, but they feel that they should do their grandstanding, or they feel that this is something that they should get behind, and they don't really know what they are talking about. For example, a lot of folk have talked to me about one of the guys asking the questions was the house father. And I was like, is that like Dobby the house elf from Harry Potter? I was very, very confused with that. It reminded me, actually, now that I think of it, quite a bit of Dobby the house elf from Harry Potter. I've been playing my Hogwarts Legacy game. That might be just why that isn't in my head. But, I mean, this meeting started off in a bad way when you've got Christine Sinclair, one of the best players, male or female, that Canada has ever produced, saying that Nick Bontis sits at a meeting saying to her, what was it Christine was bitching about again? Now, you knew things were not going to go well for the CSA from right after that, and it started to unravel for them, rightly so, because that is absolutely scandalous for him to say that to her while she's sitting there. I thought a lot of this at times, Zach, was farcical. Not from the women's testimony at all. I thought they gave good, succinct answers. There was a few things, though, that they clearly weren't expecting questions on, or didn't have the answers for, or gave wrong answers when asked about, for example, some and stuff, but we'll come to that. But it was farcical because the MPs were grandstanding. They simply did not understand how football works, how world football works. I'd go as far as to question how many of them have actually seen a football game in their life.
Yeah, no, that was fair. That's fair. I think, the grandstanding and the way they made some statements and posed some of their questions was just showed their lack of understanding of both football and in some of the specifics, some of the topics at hand. Like
Canada's hosting 2 games in the 2026 World Cup, one in Vancouver and one in Toronto.
Yeah, don't get me started.
I will be getting you started when I'll be mentioning things like the players should be the ones that select their own coach. Did you get consulted in that? Why did you not help pick the coach that you wanted that would maybe play you because of your chum?
Oh, my.
Or, hey, this organisation that's been elected to make business decisions and agree deals, did they ask you if you liked this deal that they signed?
There was a number of statements like that were just...
I have had folk, though, come back to me and say, why shouldn't they? They should be allowed to make those decisions. No, they shouldn't. I don't care that this isn't a business and it's a non-profit. I worked for a non-profit. We did not ask all the volunteers at our non-profit, hey, should we do this?
Yeah, no, I think, I think there's some of their understanding of how the national teams work and how national teams in general work, it was just really off base. I like, in a normal scenario, I could see like the federation being like, hey, like, Christine, you're our captain. We're thinking about hiring person X. What do you think? Kind of thing. But definitely you don't survey the whole squad and be like, hey, what do you this is what we're gonna do. Or they made it sound like, hey, were you invited to the job interviews for the coach? Like it was really bad. There was a number of things that were just really it was frustrating. And having listened to some people's comments about it all, have also kind of just been frustrating to see the misunderstanding or some of the approaches taken to it all. But I think the someone is a classic example. Even the players who, to be fair, they didn't know anything about the CSB, even though it was like reported on when everything was happening with the CSB, and they didn't know anything about it until they felt it impacted their lives. Which is, I'm not saying that in a bad way. Just that's factually kind of how they've talked about it.
And that is also factually how a lot of people are with a lot of things in the world. So, but
when they were talking about some, they had no idea what they're talking about. And they talked about how it's been gone for a while and it's been gone because it's not right. It's kind of the insinuation they made.
It ended at the end of 2022 for one thing. The deal that they had with the USSF.
Exactly. And then my understanding, was it 2022 or 2021?
They made the decision in 2021, but the deal ran until the end of 2022.
And then my understanding is that the U.S. Soccer did that because they felt like they could make more money themselves.
Yep, because some had served its purpose of 20 years of existence and growing the game and getting MLS off the ground and helping the national team. So they thought they could take over those things themselves now. But I haven't done all the deep diving on this, is that it's not going as super well, them running it on their own so far, or there's been some issues, or they're not projected to make nearly as much as they did when it was a part of some, partly because some packages it together with things like MLS rights and all that kind of stuff. And now that MLS has gone the Apple route, it's all fractured.
Yeah. And so I've heard some people say that actually, USSF is going to take a huge loss. I don't know if it's this year or they took one last year or whatever, in the anticipation of them taking over these things on their own. So it's not all as simple as people think. And again, this was one area where the four players in the hearing didn't understand the facts, didn't understand the history, and don't even or either won't admit to or don't really understand the actual role. And this is one of the big problems in this. And again, it goes back to what you said at the very beginning of this conversation, Michael, is that what does Canada Soccer exist to do? They exist to grow, develop, and provide oversight for the game in Canada. And all these decisions, and they've made some bad decisions, sure. They made some bad decisions. Maybe they look bad in hindsight. They made some bad decisions at the time. Absolutely. The Nike deal was a bad decision at the time. I think most people would say they feel the CSB deal is a bad decision in hindsight, even though I think that's debatable. But they did all these things, especially the CSB thing, especially CPL. They did them all to grow the game in our country. If those things don't happen, the game is still years behind where it could be and where it should be. And the other thing I want to say is this, and maybe this is something you want to talk about later, but I'm going to say it now, is it's the same with the women's game. Like, I used this illustration recently in communication with some friends about something else, but there's a lot of things, Michael, in life that I'm not good at, but I wish I was. Okay, things like art, music, cooking, right? Like, I wish I was better at those things. I wish I took the time and energy and whatever to be better at those things. I'm not. Another thing that I'm not good at, Michael, is gardening. Okay, I don't where I live now, if I put a garden that would grow fruit in my backyard, it would be eaten by all the amazing wildlife that lives really close to my backyard. So we don't do that. My wife's done some things on the windowsill and some sage here and some herbs there and whatever, but Not in the way I would like to. Not like my grandparents, who had a huge, like my grandparents, had come from Europe, like they converted almost their whole backyard into a giant, vegetable garden. But what I do know about gardening is that you do a lot of work to till the soil, to make the soil right. So maybe there's bad stuff in the soil, or rocks, or whatever, clay or whatever, and you got to have the right kind of soil. So you got to cultivate that soil. That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of time. And then I know that when you plant a seed, there's a period of time where you don't see all the things that are happening. There's all these things that are happening under the soil before the seed germinates, and not just germinates, but germinates to the point where it can break ground and come above and be seen, and then you're like, aha, like that moment in the movie Martian where Matt Damon's farming potatoes in his own stuff and whatever, and he walks by the thing and he goes back and he sees, like, the potato plant has broken through the soil and it's starting to grow, and he knew it was growing, but now he can see it growing. And my position, my perspective on the growth of women's football in our country, and in particular when it comes to having a women's league in our country, is that there are things that are happening that people can't see, or that people don't know about, that people can't talk about because they're in progress. And to say that CPL and the CSA and the CSB have done nothing, I think is doesn't create the right picture. Because I know people in the CPL who have been working at it, who are trying to work at it, who are trying to make it a part of what this is, because they believe in it and because they believe it needs to happen. And so when some of these people talk negatively about what the CSA, or when they say the CSA has done nothing, I think that that's a little bit at least unfair, because they are working towards something. The Project 8 thing, I think, is both good and unfortunate. It's unfortunate because it feels like it's the exact same thing that happened with those teams, in the
prairies.
In the prairies, who said we're going to have a Division 2 in Canada, and they went out publicly, said we're having press releases, we're having a Division 2, but they never got sanctioned. They were never sanctioned. And it's the same thing with Project 8. I know Project 8 is working towards sanctioning, but it's the same kind of thing where they're coming out and they're saying, we don't care about what the rules are. We're going to do whatever we want because we think it's best, because we don't see what's happening. And I have real concerns that either with Project 8, either it's not going to come to fruition as their own thing in the way they want it to be, or that it will only come to fruition if it will only come to fruition with a few, like in conjunction with what the Canadian Soccer Association is trying to work at, and what the CPL is trying to have in terms of having a women's league as a part of their whole structure, the same way that they have with League One BC, which they own and run and operate, and the same way which they have with BC League One, which they don't yet own, but that's, I think, the long-term plan.
That's the ultimate plan, yeah.
So, I think, anyways, there's some things in this thing that really were really frustrating, even though my end goal, and like you said, your end goal is that they would get these things, that these things would happen. But there's some frustrations about how some of this is all playing out, I guess.
If I keep your gardening analogies going, my idea of perfect gardening is I look to see what my neighbour's growing, and it's like, oh, their carrots look very good. I'm just going to take those carrots, and those carrots are now mine. And I guess that's how CSB have viewed all the money coming in from the national team. I know, I just wanted to get that gag in.
No, but that's the thing, though. There was no money coming in.
No, I know. I thought I'd put that.
The whole CSB thing is Canada Soccer, for whatever, and we've said this a million times before, and we'll probably say it a number of times until this all comes to a head, or to get sorted out or whatever, is this Canadian Soccer Association was losing money, having to pay money.
Mm-hmm.
The evolution of the CSB was something that guaranteed them income from things that they were losing. So they turned a negative in their financials, negative hundreds of thousands of dollars, into positive millions, right? Like, should it be more? Okay, that's the other conversation. That's the conversation that can be had. But was the deal horrendous when they made it? I personally don't believe so. And like we said, it was all impacted by the men qualifying for the World Cup.
Yeah. There was a couple of things from the committee that I felt that the politicians are clearly looking for from it. Now, before I even get into that, what is the purpose of these meetings? What is the end goal of it? What's the ultimate? What's everyone trying to achieve? Is it fair pay and equity and equality? What is the actual point of this?
Well, that's for the are you talking about for the committee or for the players?
For the committee, it's like, why are they having this? What are they hoping to achieve at the end of it?
I don't know. I guess to put pressure on to make their values a reality. I don't know. Is that fair? I don't know.
Yeah, because it's just something that's just hit me just now. I'm like, we're talking about this, and actually, I don't know what the end goal of this is. But there are a couple of things that became glaringly obvious during this. One of them was the politicians want to have Victor Montagliani in front of them. Oh, yeah. And they gave the women several opportunities to name him.
And they didn't.
And they didn't. But they did say, if there's any other names you think of, you can get in touch after.
No,
after
at the end, the one guy just asked, was it the house guy?
The Dobby, yeah.
Yeah, he just asked, I think, right? I think he just named him.
Possibly, I think, because by that point, it was like, you haven't said what we want you to do.
Yeah, we haven't said what we want you to say, so we're going to say it.
But the other thing that was obvious is they're wanting to explore the finances of the CSA and CSB. Now, CSA, as a non-profit, they can have audits, they can look at all that. CSB is a private business. It's up to them if they want to open their books up or not. And CSB have come out and said that they're happy to renegotiate part of the deal to provide incremental funding to Canada Soccer. Not that they're going to rip up the deal. And, I mean, for me, the ideal thing with this CSB deal, and I know why it wasn't agreed back then, and we won't go over old things again, but I don't think the national team should have been part of the CSB deal. I think it should just have been domestic football. But I do get why they needed that, because that's where a lot of the money's coming in from the sponsors and everything like that at all. And I tweeted this after Scott Mitchell from Forge and the Tiger Cats had tweeted about the investment that they've put into it. These owners would have been stupid not to have put this to the CSA, Canada Soccer, to agree to this. So you can be mad at the owners, you can be mad at the CSB deal getting done, but they were doing it so that the Canadian Premier League was sustainable. If you want to get mad at anyone, it's the CSA for agreeing to it and the way that they agreed to it. I think it's pretty clear that the Canadian Premier League would not have survived through COVID without the CSB deal being in place. And even with that, they are losing six-figure sums on a yearly basis. Now, folk have said to me, if the league's not sustainable, you shouldn't be needing money to prop it up. And if you are needing money to prop it up, then just let it fold. That just puts everything backwards.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. When you needed people who were willing to say, I'm going to invest, even though this is going to take time to turn a profit. And the CSB deal is something that, again, they didn't expect it till 2026 to really help them. It made it so that even if we lose our shirt it was signed in 2017, even if we lose our shirt for 9 years, we know that in the 10th year, we should get like some kind of significant benefit. Yeah. Now, again, all that was sped up by the men qualifying for the Men's World Cup.
Yeah. And it brought more interest in the game than ever before. I've talked several times about all these people that have suddenly appeared on conference calls that were never around and had never even heard of most of these people. And it's like, oh, they're on calls now and they get to ask questions ahead of me. But I think the ideal thing is the CSB handles CPL, League One, all that kind of stuff. And the thing is, I know there's not a lot of money there. That's the problem. It would be good if the national teams could sort out their own TV rights, player compensation for jersey sales, And I said this at the time, and I'm going to say this again. I don't think it was right that the CSA agreed a deal with Fonzie and only Fonzie, because that splits your negotiating. And I just don't, for me, that comes from a union background and equality and stuff, that's not on. And if you're going to do that, you do it with Sink as well, because Sink is the player that's been the standard bearer for Canadian soccer of any sex, any gender, for umpteen years now. Right. And she hasn't got these benefits. So I didn't like that. I
don't disagree with you, Michael, but I think they had to do that because it was Alphonso Davies' representatives that said, we're suing you.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't do something. So it wasn't like they're like, oh, we should sort out some image rights. Let's just start with Fonzie. They had to.
We should stress that, yeah. But, I mean, when it comes to a women's league, again, I personally feel it is the National Association's duty to provide a domestic league for men and women, and Canada Soccer has failed in that. And we can look at all the reasons as to why that hasn't happened. Like, the onus isn't on MLS clubs to make sure that they provide a women's team, because the MLS clubs are a private business. If they want to, great. And like, we had a little chat about this when we were talking yesterday. Like, Greg Kerfoot gets a lot of criticism.
Rightly so for something.
Yes, yep. But the investment that he's put in to like residency programs for youth development of both sexes, and for the money that he's put into the women's game over the years, has been absolutely phenomenal. And to kind of have little snarky comments from the politicians' side about, oh, they've needed private funding to do this, and this. Yes, they have needed private funding, but without that private funding, the women would not have had a lot of what they had up to this point.
Well, that's part of the thing. Those four players are sitting there, and at least a couple of them, I think, referenced, maybe it was Sophie, I think, referenced, we had these residency, camps, and if it wasn't for this, I would never have, been as close, or I would have never have been identified, or I would never have the opportunities I had. Well, those residency camps were like fully funded by Kerfoot, if my memory serves me correctly. So you can't talk about, hey, why can't...
And remember, they've also said as well, sorry to cut you off, that there was a private donor that helped him this trip to Brazil. Now, they didn't say it was Kerfoot, but I mean, immediately I thought, I wonder if that's Greg Kerfoot.
Totally.
Because...
So you can't talk about how the federation's only about what they're spending, only what they're how they're spending the money. How come no one in these things has said, how are these things, like what other sources of income are coming in terms of who's donating? Like, you know what I mean?
And it's not right. It shouldn't take a private individual to fund all this.
Well, it shouldn't, but it's been like that. So like, I mean, but it's not even just the women. My understanding is John Herdman in the last, year or 2 years has done a whole bunch of, passing the hat to people he thought, I mean, maybe Kerfoot's one of them, passing the hat to people saying, hey, can you help us? So to help in their World Cup preparations so that they could, the preparations could be all that they could be. Right. And I'm guessing he probably did that when he was the coach of the women's team as well. So there's one sense that, I know what part of what the women were saying is we don't have what we used to have. And part of my question is, well, is what you used to have, was it only possible because of exterior funding and nothing to do with the CSA revenues or lack thereof or whatever? And so is it fair to expect those things, or are we not asking those people to think? Because when you talk about Kerfoot, I mean, he's invested so much in football. Like, you can't take that away from him. But when you talk about women's football and you talk about Greg Kerfoot, you also can't help but talk about, which they did in the hearings a little bit, about scandal around those teams. So he is tied to those scandals. Whatever you think about him, or whatever you think about his involvement or lack thereof, or whatever, and I won't comment on that right now, but whatever you think about that, it's tied to that, right? And so there is, maybe because of that, he has stepped back from all that, right? That might be a reason. You see, though, his club now is going out of their way to try and repair the damage they've done in the women's community, because there's a huge there's been huge backlash against them in these last 3 years, right? Or 4 years now, I guess 4 years, because of the scandals and because of what's come out and because of what's been brought to light. And so they have worked really hard. So this Project 8 thing, they're a part of it, I think, partly because they're trying to repair their reputation in that community. They hire Steph Labbe because they're trying to repair the damage that's been done to their reputation in that community.
And full credit to them as well, because it's
Totally.
like that.
It's smart.
Because you also have to ask the question as well. When the Whitecaps folded their women's team in 2012, 10 years have passed, and there's not been another pro team start in Canada. There's not been a Canadian NWSL team. There's not been a pro league. Now, there's got to be a reason for that it hasn't happened. And like, you can say it's a variety of reasons. CSA mismanagement, and I do firmly believe they should have made sure, no matter what, that there was a women's league of some kind, of some level, nationwide in Canada, because that is their role to do that, to provide that place to play. Other smaller countries around the world are able to do that. But when it comes to talking about money, which a lot of this committee meeting is obviously about money and compensation and where's money going and what's coming in and what's being spent on what, and are people getting disadvantaged? There's a reason there's not been a women's league, and it's like, is it financially viable or are they going to lose money? And if they are going to lose money, it's like why the CPL has lost money, and that's why the CSB to prop it up. So there's money that comes in from the Olympics and the on the podium, which was mentioned a hell of a lot, and
which was another awkward part of the thing.
I mean, I don't understand the Olympics funding side of it, so I'm not going to sit here and try and pretend I know what I'm talking about. I don't know, do they fund the flights to the Olympics? Do they fund training? Do they do this or whatever? I mean, it was mentioned that they would have to medal to keep getting their funding, as if that was a bad thing, but that's how it works with all Olympic sports, to the brief understanding that I have of it, that if you're not performing in a sport, I know that's how it works in the UK Olympic anyway, that if a sport is not performing and not medaling and not doing well, then they direct the funds to somewhere else.
Yeah, that was an awkward part for me. Yeah, when they talked about the Canadian Olympic Committee, the COC, and it sounded, and maybe I'm misunderstanding what they said, but it sounded like they said that the COC said to them, if you don't medal, your funding will be cut or limited or whatever. Which again, that whole program is about trying to fund excellence to gain achievement or whatever. So to have them say that if you don't medal, your funding could go down, it seems, one, logical, and then two, you had this other layer of this modern mental health element of like, oh, can you imagine all the stress and whatever that puts on, extra stress that puts on the players? Well, in the one sense of hey, they're having issues with their association and private funding and whatever, I can understand that it would be a bigger burden. But it's also in another sense, it also is, this is competitive sport. Like, that's what happened. Like,
this is the same for a cyclist, for a snowboarder.
Yeah.
They've got that stress as well, that if they're not performing, they might lose their funding and they have to go out and get private funding. That's how sport works. And this was a fundamental flaw of this committee. They don't seem to understand how football works or how sport works.
And that also, that element, and this is where my understanding might be off base, is like, that has nothing to do with Canada Soccer. That has everything to do with the Canadian Olympic Committee.
Yeah.
So,
but this is another part of this, how it's all a mishmash. They're throwing too many things into one hearing.
And I think that should have been clarified, right? Because if that committee was, and it felt like they were, if members of that committee were disturbed by that finding or by that fact, that's something to take up with the Canadian Olympic Committee, nothing to do with Canada Soccer.
I mean, I would rather pull my teeth out than have to rewatch that hearing, I've got to say. But it would be interesting to go back to see how many times they were like shocked or said unbelievable or something like that, and trying to work out how much was actually genuine that they were like that, or it was just they felt that that's what they needed to say. I also don't know how many times you had to thank the women for turning up as well. It was that kind of then just took it.
Yeah, because they kept on saying it, like even when they came back to them for another question, like, I just want to say again, in case you didn't hear me the first time, thank you for being here.
It's like, I feel I have to say this because I'm trying to earn politician points here.
Yeah, it was weird.
What I don't want to happen, and what I fear is going to happen, is there's going to be a wedge driven between the men and the women's game in Canada, as well as the national team and the domestic game. When you have issues raised, and like, none of this is the fault of the women either. The only criticism I would say of the women is it took them maybe 70, 80 minutes, maybe even 90 minutes to raise the fact that the men's budget had been cut as well. And it wasn't just the women's budget. And I think that should have been clarified right from the start. But the politicians were trying to drive this wedge. Little snarky comments like, where are the women ranked in FIFA rankings, and where are the men ranked?
Well, and that comes back to the fact that this is apples and oranges, right? You can't compare the FIFA rankings for the two teams when the football is so different, right? The football landscapes are so different.
And how many actual teams could win these major tournaments in the women's game and the men's game?
That's another element to it. I think too, the lack of one of the issues that impacts this all and impacts something else, which I think we'll talk about in a moment, is it's not the pay equality, right? Like so the CSA has come out and said, we're going to pay the players the same for each game, whatever. I think there's a caveat, depending on the level of the opponent or something, but
that's the bonus side. They'll get the same game day, right. And I think that is 100% right. They should.
Yeah, that's great.
Women, if you're playing for your country, it's a set pay structure.
Awesome.
And
the problem is then you have number of games and you have the actual cost in these games. This is a huge thing that they apparently are not happy with the CSA's answers to these questions, because I mean, anyone who's watched the men's and women's national team for the last 10 or even 20 years, their schedules, their cycles are so different, right? Like, I remember there was a time where it was like, it felt like and this is partly due to the fact that the club game for women is not as developed as the men's game. And so for most of the women players in the world, especially in North America, they make most of their money from playing for their national teams, or they make more money playing for their national teams than they do for their club teams. Now that's beginning to change. And for especially our players who are playing in Europe, I think that there is a considerable amount of growth there, and that's encouraging. And hopefully that trend continues, especially as more and more European sides, I think, value women's teams, invest in them, and grow the fullness of their club to incorporate both men and women. But the cycles are different. Women used to play, it felt like 20 to 25 games a year or something crazy, where the men would play like 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever it was. And what happened though in this again with the craziness, this is partly due to COVID, but the craziness of the men's World Cup qualifying is the men, which were supposed to have a crazy route, which would have been like a ton of games also, it still ended up being more games than they usually play in a year, right? Because they had, 14 games in qualifying?
Well, yeah. So I looked at what games the men and the women played in 2021 and 2022, because a lot was made of 2013 to 2019.
Right.
The world game has changed a lot after COVID, so I think it's worth looking at modern day. And these are going to fluctuate because the women feel that they're going to be hard done by and not make as much money. In 2021, the men played 19 matches to the women's 17. In 2022, the women played 2 more, 14 to the men's 12. In 2021, the men played 0 friendlies, whereas of the women's thing, they had a lot of friendlies in there because their only main competition was the Olympics. So a big chunk of this is the international calendar.
Yeah.
And yet CONCACAF has been slow to add more competitive games for women.
But aren't they getting a Nations League?
They're getting Nations League, they're getting the Gold Cup now. So they're getting these things, but it's been slow.
And who's doing that, Michael, for CONCACAF? No, it's Victor Montpellier, right?
I personally differentiate between friendlies and competitive games.
Totally, as you should.
Yeah, but they are still playing games, and it's not the women's fault that they haven't got competitive games to play. They have to go and find these friendlies because they've been failed in having a proper competitive system. But you've also got the men's path to the World Cup takes them all over the place.
Yeah.
So
this is a huge difference between
in 2022, the men played in 9 different countries.
9
for their 12 matches, and the women played in 5 from their 14. So the men's World Cup thing is a 2-year cycle, and it takes them all over the Caribbean and Central America. Whereas the women, and this is no fault of the women, and I'm not again, I feel I have to keep stressing this. That this is an aside, sorry. I'm trying to keep these focus points, but I've had about 5 people message me this week that are too scared to tweet their opinions out.
Yeah.
They want to tell me what their opinions are because they don't want to get cancelled or a backlash. And it shouldn't be like that, because it's very valid points that they've made, and these discussions have to be had. But the women, through no fault of their own, haven't had competitive games, and their qualifying is usually in the US. The qualification for the World Cup was a 2-week tournament in the US. And it was raised, but it's because you're so high in the world that you don't have to go through that qualification now. That doesn't come into it. It's how it is. And yes, they might play less matches than men in 1 year, as they did in 2021, but they played more than the men in 2022, and that was a World Cup year for the men.
Yeah. Because, like you said, the women will have the She Believes Cup, all in the United States. They'll have the Algarve Cup, all in Portugal. Algarve, sorry. They'll have a, remember, we hosted the Olympic qualifying in 2011, 2012. It was all at BC Place, all the games.
It was at a great occasion. Yeah.
So, again, that's just where those things are at yet. So when you talk about, when you're talking about not just pay equality, but you're talking about equity, you're talking about getting the same things. It's this. The CSA has come out and said, yeah, we want that, but the type of games and where the games are playing will impact what the budgets look like, because it costs less to have everyone in Portugal for 3 games or in the United States for 3 games than it does to go for the women's team, than it does to go to Honduras and to Costa Rica and to the US and to Mexico and to Cuba and to Panama all in the same year.
Yeah, because on the Footy Prime podcast, I haven't had a chance to go back and listen to this bit, but it seemed like at first Amy Walsh was on it, and it felt like at first she was saying, well, if the men get a budget of $1 million for the year, the women should get a budget of $1 million for the year as well. And then it was like, well, what if they play less games? Well, that shouldn't matter. But then she kind of backtracked a little bit on that, because it should matter. If the men are playing more games, they need a bigger budget. If all the men's games were in Canada and America, but the women were travelling all over the place, then the women need a bigger budget because they've got more flights and they've got hotels. What should be the same, no matter where they go, for however long it is, the camp fees should be the same. So the women and the men should get the same level of hotel accommodation. They should get the same number of training days. They should get the same number of staff attending. If the men get a private chef, the women should get a private chef. And that's one of the things that was one of the points for the World Cup. It's like both teams should have the same thing and the same budget for that, but you can't have the same annual budget because their paths are going in completely different ways.
Yeah.
As I feel our talk is now starting to do as well.
Yeah.
But part of the problem of this is because they're trying to cram everything into the one thing. And I do understand why, because now they've got everyone's focus on this. So they may as well get all these things out. But all these issues are very different and very important in their own ways. Like safe sport needs a huge focus on this as well because of everything that's happened. I've just talked there about equity and equality for stuff. If the men fly charter to big tournaments, the women should get to fly charter to big tournaments. Same with the youth boys and girls. They should be treated exactly the same way for their qualifications, for their World Cup appearances, whatever.
Which is, I mean, that was what the women kept on going. We're saying we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for the future. And again, I think that's great. I think that's right. And we do need to be careful about what's happening. But I think also some of those age group things we have to ask: how were they funded in the past?
Mm-hmm. I think the current tone and direction of all this risks causing a fractious relationship that's going to take a long time to heal between so many different aspects of the game, and including supporters of that. There's, if you look at some of the online comments on social media, Discord, forums over the past month or so, a lot of this, the comments, it's very sexist views and attitudes. Not all, but there is a lot of that. And people are afraid to speak out because they get attacked for, oh, you're not supporting the women, or, oh, you're being sexist, you're being misogynistic, or anti-women. And it's not that. It's people are trying to have much needed conversations, and it has to happen. People have to listen to each point of view in this and then find the proper way forward, because it helps no one to cause a split. And like the easiest thing would be to have a Canadian Women's Soccer Association, a Canadian Men's Soccer Association, but that doesn't fly under FIFA rules. You can't have that. And I don't know, the friction, the splitting, the trying to force this, it needs to stop, because the game is in an absolute fucking mess here. The governing body's in a mess. It's like you've got... It's kind of apt that Crooks have taken over Canada Soccer. Or Charmaine Crooks, sorry, has taken over Canada Soccer.
She was hanging out with Bev today at the game.
Yeah, she was. She was at the game. Har was like looking at everywhere to see if she could find her. Went, she's not going to speak to you, Har. She went, I can still ask her questions. I was like, yeah. But she couldn't find her. But I don't know where we go from here. I don't know what the end of all these meetings are. And the one thing I feel that also has to be said here is these 4 women's players went and spoke at this committee where they should be focusing on the fact that they're going to a World Cup.
Yeah.
They do not need this. Some of what they've done and how they've gone about it hasn't been great. Calling a strike when it didn't meet labour law regulations, that kind of stuff. But they're football players. They're relying on advice from their advisors, which you maybe have to question what some of that is. They need to be focusing on where they're playing. Like Christine Sinclair talked about, she wanted to get subbed off just to make a statement. That's not great either. She should be playing an international match. They shouldn't be putting up with all this shit. The timing of it is absolutely terrible in a World Cup year. This would have been so much better if it had come out after the World Cup, but it all boils down to the fact that they hadn't had a pay agreement for 2022, and that's what's brought matters to a head. Where do we go now? I mean, the next committee meeting is on the 20th, where Canada Soccer are going to be there. Nick Bontis and Errol Cochrane, I believe, are definitely there. I don't know if Charmaine Crooks will be there or not. I mean, it's shaping up to be a potential bloodbath, but at the same time, if the committee are as clueless and not prepared as they were for this, Canada Soccer will wipe the floor with them. And it's going to actually set back what the women are trying to get here. Because if they get asked these stupid questions, Canada Soccer will just reply with facts of, well, it's done like this because of this, for this reason. This is a CONCACAF thing. It's nothing to do with this. This is a FIFA decision. It's nothing to do with us. Yeah,
which that did come up, and one of those things came up, which I think they took a little bit out of context in this last meeting with the again the setup question of, did anyone threaten you? But before we came here today, and they're like, well, Canada Soccer did talk to us about
because that is a genuine threat that is there. It's hanging over them, and they don't seem to understand that.
Canada Soccer, the tone and whatever, we don't hear that or whatever. Canada Soccer informed the players of FIFA's policy that if governments interfere with the FA, there can be sanctions. And they mentioned that to them because that could include them being taken out, removed from the World Cup. They weren't, my sense, and again, the comments weren't made to me. I don't know. Maybe they were threatening in their tone or whatever. They're stating facts and not their decision, not what they want. They don't want their team to be eliminated because of government interference.
Oh, the worst thing for Canada, because the backlash in Canada soccer if they then got kicked out of the World Cup
would be crazy.
Would be huge. It wouldn't be on the players. It would be on Canada soccer, and they know that, so they don't want that to happen. They don't want government involvement, but here we are. I mean, what we want at the end of this is a fair deal, and obviously they've made the public release on the day of the hearing, which you and me have different opinions on this. I think it was shitty timing. And I know you say folk are asking for transparency, and they got transparency. The timing on the day of the committee was stupid.
My perspective isn't that it was the best timing, but Michael, were they going to do it the day before on International Women's Day when they also would have got slaughtered for it?
Oh, of course that was.
Were they going to do it the day after the committee where they would have been again slaughtered for? Oh, you're just knee-jerk reacting to whatever to the committee.
That's true. I do see that. They've been
that's
why they should have come out with it 2 or 3 weeks ago.
They've been getting slaughtered, publicly for lack of transparency and for poor communication and understanding what's going on. The one thing which I would question, the one thing I would question about it is, and obviously the players mentioned this, is as much as Canada Soccer was trying to be transparent with what's going on, where things are at, where offers are at, it sounded like from what the players said that there were elements of what they shared that were supposedly supposed to be kept private. Or
I was very surprised that they put actual figures on that as to they're going to get paid this amount of money per game. And
but having read that document, I didn't, again, just from an outsider perspective, nothing in red in there to me felt like someone should be upset about this. Like it all seemed like kind of, but I think my guess is partly why the players felt put off by it was because they had been telling people we can't talk about the details, and then the CSA talked about the details. Yeah. So I feel like, but that's the one thing in this whole thing is the power play that they've had is their ability to connect with people over social media, and via the media, and so they've used that really, really well. But they've held off talking about some of these details. And now that the CSA has, it's like they've lost. Maybe they're frustrated that they feel it wasn't supposed to be talked about, so they're frustrated, which is totally understandable. Or they feel like they lost part of their leverage in being able to share that themselves. But
I mean, Canada Soccer are definitely seen as the villains in this by, I think, the vast majority of people. And I don't know how they can get out of it. I mean,
and they have a lot to answer for. There's a lot
I am not sticking up for them in any way, shape, or form. I would just like to stress as well.
They have a lot of people there who, I don't really trust. They have some people there who I do trust, but they're not at the highest level. But
what is going to be interesting is what direction Canada Soccer takes, because obviously, again, a lot was made of the fact that Charmaine Crooks has taken over. It's in the bylaws. That they're going to have a proper vote and selection.
Yeah.
And it's like, I do feel there needs to be player representation. It was pointed out to me a lot of the players don't have that knowledge and skills to do that. But you need football people on there. But then other people have pointed out to me, I'd rather have non-football people out of there that's looking at it with a fresh head.
That would also require maybe some alterations in terms of how things are set up, right? Because my understanding, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but is you have to have been on the board for a year to become the president, right? So it's not like you, Michael McCall, can say, I can solve this problem. I'm the person. Vote for me. Get me in. Whatever.
You can become president, but there are
board members positions.
There are positions that you can put yourself forward to. Like I could put myself forward for one of the floating board members if I wanted. I would just have to get a nomination from one of the provincial associations, I believe.
Oh, you're good friends with some of those people, yeah?
Well, the Alberta folk like me, so maybe.
The fact that you're not a citizen, that doesn't matter, right?
It means I can't get called in front of the committee, I think. I think that could be good. They might like me for that. Yeah, put him in charge. He can't testify. I don't know. I mean, I didn't want this to be as long as it is, but You dropped around last night, and I said, I'm in the middle of typing up all my notes for talking about this tomorrow. I feel I've relived this through two nights running. I don't even know if I've gone through what all my notes are here, but let's just call this a day.
I'm sure we'll be coming back to it.
Yeah, probably after the 20th. It's a giant mess. I hope the players get what they're wanting.
Yep.
I hope the game gets restructured the way it needs to, and it gets the investment that it needs to, and it gets allocated in the right way.
Yep.
I hope the CSB deal can be made more transparent so that people see that it has been good for the game. There's big aspects of it I don't like, and I don't think the national team should be part of it. I can't see CSB all of a sudden saying, hey, you take all those rights back, because the CPL is going to fold if they do that. It's just going to collapse. I hope a women's league starts within the next 2 years. I don't care who runs this women's league. If it's the CSA, the CSB, if it's the Project A, if it's all three of them working together, which seems highly unlikely right now, it feels.
Yeah.
There just needs to be a league. And if everyone's wanting it, just work together and get this done. Because it's only by working together and sharing resources and knowledge that things are going to happen. I don't know. Maybe I'm just living in a kind of cloud cuckoo land, and it's never going to happen in the game here.
Yeah.
But it's such an exciting time for the game in this country. The small part that we play in it, I love that we've got a part to play and a role to play. We do this show. We have a website. I do commentary. I do some other stuff for some of the local teams. I love that I play a small part in growing the game here, and football should be right up there as one of the top sports after the World Cup in 2026. It's not going to overtake hockey, but it should really be high up there. Everyone's talking about it. This is derailing it. You've got a women's team that's getting prepared for a World Cup in the worst possible way. If they get bounced out, they can turn around and say, well, this was on our minds.
Yeah.
And it's genuinely hard to say, well, you know what? Yeah, I could totally see that would disrupt you.
Totally.
It's a mess. I don't know the way forward. Let us know your views. Do you have any final thoughts on this, Zach?
No, I like you said, yeah, I do hope that the women get pay equality and then equity on how they're treated, and in terms of the same kind of preparation and support staff and number of players so you can train properly and all those things. I hope that it's rectified so that can happen. And
I hope the youth camps come back as well, because they are crucial.
Yeah, youth camps. I hope. I long for a women's league in Canada. I personally hope that is in conjunction or as a part of the Canadian Premier League, so that it's together. I think that would be the most ideal in the long term, despite some of the fractures that exist. And
I mean, the great thing about League One BC is the clubs are mandated to have male and female teams.
Right.
And I think, obviously, they're starting from afresh, so it's
same
easy to do that.
Same with League One Ontario.
I wasn't 100% sure if that was the case there, so it is there as well, right?
As far as I know, it is. But that's the thing, Michael. The CPL owners have been having this conversation from the beginning as well.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's genuinely financial suicide if the league's losing money to then go and launch a bunch of new teams.
Totally. But they're like, and they are like, this is not a. There are owners in the CPL. Let me put it this way. There are owners in the CPL who desperately want to have a women's team as a part of their football club. And maybe there are some who they need more convincing or proof that it will work or whatever. And this is obviously playing a role in that.
So the best thing is everyone works together and you have a mishmash. The CPL teams that want to put teams in, along with the Whitecaps. I mean, Calgary Foothills and Cavalry are very closely
totally
kind of connected over the years on the male side for sure. Yeah, let's just see how it goes. Let us know your thoughts, and we've had a lot of thoughts on Twitter. As I said, this section went way over what I had actually planned for, so who knows how long this podcast is going to be.
Wait, does that mean we're not getting into part 5 about the Bundesliga?
I'm afraid we're going to have to scrap that. I'm sorry. We'll have Marcus Clocks on a future show. Was that the name I'd given him? I can't even remember. Manuel Clocks, that was it. Manuel Clocks, that was the joke. That feels like 5 hours ago. Let's get the show finished, because let's finish on some positive, some happy times. It's Football Violence Awareness Month. And I'm going to finish the show with a song from our Artist of the Month, Luxembourg band, the Skin Flicks. And this is a song, you can find it on their 2022 album, Cream of the Cropped. You can also find it on their 2000 albums, Lies, Damned Lies, and Skinhead Stories. This is Terrorist Terror. The Skin Flicks, Terrorist Terror, representing Luxembourg for Football Violence Awareness Month. That is it for this show. No more violence to be had. Just before we go, Zach, any final thoughts from you? Where can folk find you online? Anything you learned this week, or any fun facts?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ZacharyM, occasionally tweeting there. What I learned this week is that Vancouver FC will be playing Valor in a friendly on Saturday, March 18th.
Yes.
Is it noon or is it?
It's at noon at Willoughby.
Willoughby.
It says spies out for that.
It said stadium pitch, so I'm.
It said stadium pitch as well. I was like,
it's got to be the one behind the
really,
stadium.
it can't be the stadium pitch.
I'm guessing it's the one where they had the other friendly, which would be great. So if you,
it's the one which if you go at night, you just hear tons of frogs. It's amazing.
Oh, there you go.
I'm deadly serious. I was at a provincial cup game there. Oh, the frog chorus was amazing.
There you go. So yeah, if you're interested in that, fvfanatics@gmail.com. Be in touch. We'll have some people out at that, as we did at the last game, and we will on the 25th.
Yeah, I'll be out at both of those games as well.
Yeah, Michael will be there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Langley club called Vancouver that is launching their kit in Richmond. That'll be fun. Just encompasses the whole Lower Mainland. That's what the club's all about. Don't forget to get your TSS tickets for that Valor game on the 19th of April. TSSFC.ca, I think is the website. It's tiring times at this time of night. But yeah, make sure you get that. And we'll be back with another episode soon, talking about another couple of Whitecaps games. Will they have their first MLS victory under the belts? Will they be facing LAFC in the quarterfinals of the Champions League? I think we can pretty much say that that's already on the cards. Until next time, have a good week. Remember to put your clocks forward if you haven't already. We'll be back soon. Take care. Thanks for listening. And mon the Caps!
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers, away from the numbers.